Welcome to episode 88 of Scar Bearers. Thanks for joining me today. It's Chris DT Gordon as usual. Happy New Year. This is the first podcast of 2022. I'm so happy you can be here with me. And with me in the technological spirits are Nate and Britton Barron helping me out on the post-production side. If you want their help on your projects, just reach out to them at Nate Barron. Well, folks, like I mentioned, it's 2022. It's a new year, right? So everything's new. Like no more problems from 2021, right? No, of course not. We still have the same junk, just a different calendar page. That means our kids are still struggling with those thoughts of negativity and those challenges that trouble them every day. So please, if my message of the attitude of gratitude can help them increase their positivity, their gratitude, and their resilience, please reach out to me at chrisdtgordon.com. And speaking of resilient, my new friend and guest, Kellan Fluckiger, is a poster boy for resilience. And you're going to find out why I say that. Kellan, how are you today, my friend?
I am perfectly resilient. Let me help you with my last name. It's Fluckiger.
And it's funny. I'm so sorry.
No. Don't apologize. It's funny because it looks like Fluck, like duck and truck and the rest, but it's Fluckiger. And it is Swiss, and it used to have German Swiss, and it used to have the dots over the U, and it was Fluckiger, but it's Fluckiger. But anyway, it's perfectly fine. And yes, I'm Kellan, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm just happy I pronounced the L. Otherwise, I would get in real trouble.
You know, that was fun because I actually was a keynote speaker at a conference, a 3-day conference once that was put on by a friend of mine. And on the actual program, he left the L out of my last name. So for 3 days, he got to apologize and I got to make jokes.
It's good when someone gives you the material.
Yeah, that was fun.
So you and I share something in common that we have used as people say, our mess as our message. We have chosen to help others with what we have gone through. However, we differ in the ways that we have, gone through our trials of our tales of trials and tribulation, basically. And so most of my audience knows my story, but I bet they're excited to hear about yours.
Well, one of the things I know, I love that you're doing this, and lots of folks, one of the things I love to do is help people write books. I have a program to do that. And one of the reasons I chose to do that after I wrote a bunch of books is because people's stories like yours, their choices of, and there's plenty of stories of failure and nobody writes books about those. But the people that choose to make a difference, to pivot, to turn their message to the message, to make a choice to lift others, to make something out of their lives after a difficulty, I really honor and admire those. And so you would certainly be on that list of cool people that are doing that. My own story started when I was young. I was raised in a very strict religious home and the discipline that was applied at that time would have been today felony child abuse. I would have been removed from the home. And it was, I'd long since no longer frustrated or angry with my mom, who was the principal disciplinarian. She was too young to have kids and she didn't really know what she was doing. And she thought she was, quote, doing the right thing and saving me from hell and damnation and all the rest. But the interesting thing is her effort to do that left me. What I took out of all that was the fundamental knowledge that I was not good enough and never would be. So I started my life, high school, college, later. I'm almost 66. So I've had, a few years. I'm coming up pretty soon on my 50th high school reunion, right? So I've had a lot of years, but for the first 40, from the time I was about 13, which is when I first remember experimenting with drugs to get away from the pain of my life, till I was about 52. So about 40 years, never talking to anyone and living with the fundamental, like at the deepest level, believing that I was fundamentally flawed. Like everything that was wrong around me, all the trouble in my life, all the trouble with the relationships I had and everything else was my fault. That view led me to be like a really lousy partner. I was married and then divorced 3 times. And I was a crappy partner. I attracted broken people. I didn't know how to support or help them because I was too busy being busted. I knew how to make a lot of money, so I went and did that, thought that would fix everything, and it doesn't, and it didn't. It just allowed me to demonstrate my brokenness in more flamboyant ways, I suppose. And I had, a lot of stuff and all that sort of flamboyance, but behind the scenes, I was in and out of rehab and a poster child for stupid behavior and for poor choices. It got to the point of self-loathing that I attempted suicide a couple of times during the latter 5 years. The last 5 years that got really bad. There was one point where my cocaine use was at $3,000 a week, wow, which is a staggering amount of blow. And I was making so much money that was lunch money. But that's how broken I was. And finally, in 2007, and this is a testament to how important each one of us is to our Creator, I had a divine intervention. And the divine intervention consisted of 2 parts. And it was a Friday night in August of 2007. I was at the height of my career, making ridiculous amounts of money and doing ridiculously stupid things. I got home on a Friday night and I had 4 teenage children living with me. I was single again for the 3rd time. I had 10 kids, but 4 of them were still living with me. And I was getting ready to go out and party for the weekend. And for some reason, I felt like I needed to turn on the television. Now, that might not sound weird, except I never watched TV and I actually didn't know how to turn it on. Now, I had one of these great big TVs installed, the latest, greatest, biggest, whatever you could buy in 2007. But I realized I didn't know how to turn it on. So I had to ask one of my teenage kids to come and turn it on. And one of my daughters, she turned it on and threw the remote at me in disgust and stomped out of the room. It landed on a show called Intervention, which is a reality TV show about families who stage interventions for busted people. I didn't know what that was. I'd never heard of any of it. So anyway, I watched about 10 minutes of it, and the protagonist was an executive, a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. Go figure, right? So I watched about 10 minutes of it, and I said, screw this, I'm not watching it. So I turned it off, puttered around for another 15, 20 minutes or something. And I was going to go out. And for some reason, I felt compelled to turn the TV back on. So I did. And this time I knew how to turn it on. So I turned on the TV and that show started over at the beginning. And no, I don't have a DVR, and no, it wasn't on the schedule, and no, it can't do that, but it did. And that scared me. And so I thought maybe I better watch this. So I watched it. It didn't go well. The guy refused all the help, stomped out, and got mad at his relatives and all that stuff. But that scared me bad enough that I went to bed instead of going out to binge for the weekend. When I went to bed, I went to hell. And what I mean by that is I don't know where I went physically. Some felt like out of body. What paraded before my eyes was this whole panoply of struggle, depression, sadness, bad decisions, broken things, my whole life. Kind of like your life goes before your eyes, only it wasn't flashing. It was very slow. After some long period of time, I heard a voice that said, "It is enough." It was not an angry voice or anything. It was just, "It is enough." I woke up and it was 5:00 Saturday afternoon. So 18 hours had passed.
Wow.
And I realized that I had been, and that 18 hours, it was the most terrible torture I've ever felt. I felt so awful. We don't have words to describe that. So I was grateful for it to be over. But anyway, I realized I'd been invited to change my life. So I got up and I threw away $1,000 worth of stuff that I had and knew that I had to change. And I figured, well, I have to quit the work that I'm doing. I have to change everything. And holy crap. Okay. And so I got sober in one day. I went from $3,000 a week to zero in one day. Wow. Stone cold sober. So that was part one. Part two happened 2 weeks later. I hadn't quit yet. And in the position that I was in, I was think of a CEO gets all kinds of perks and free this, that, and the other. So I used to get free tickets.
I was going to ask, what kind of position did you have? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm very intrigued.
I was in the C-suite. So chief operating officer, chief executive officer in different companies.
Okay.
Large company. I was in the energy industry. So I was in the United States and in Canada, up and down the West Coast.
Gotcha.
So that's because I had a high ranking position. I used to get free stuff. One of the free things I got was a pair of tickets to see Yo-Yo Ma, who is, if you know classical music, you know who that is. And if you don't, you don't. And at the premier venue in the town.
He does not play with yo-yos, by the way.
No, he's a electrifying performer. But anyway, but I was single again for the third time, and I didn't want to waste this other ticket. So I came to the groups that I managed, and I said to everybody, who likes classical music? And some lady in one of the groups said, well, I do. And I said, well, okay, cool. Have I ever given you anything? And she said, no. I said, okay, fine, here, see you there. So we met at the venue, and I didn't know her very well. I knew who she was. She worked in one of my groups. But anyway, halfway through the show, which was fantastic, and I'm stone cold sober for 2 weeks. Halfway through the show, I had this feeling come over me, and I recognized it from 2 weeks before as being otherworldly, divine in origin. And a voice said to me, you need to marry this woman. And I argued. I said, you're out of your mind. I've screwed that up 3 times, plus a couple other relationships in between. That's not happening. And so later that night, we're backstage because, of course, they were backstage passes, and I get to meet everybody, blah, blah, blah. And the voice came back and said, yeah, comma, and you need to tell her tonight.
Whoa.
And I argued again like crazy, like, she could sue me for harassment. I mean, come on, this is insane. And you don't win those arguments. So I did, and it went about like you would have expected. Are you out of your mind? But she didn't call the cops, or she didn't go to the HR or whatever. 2 weeks later, it went about like you'd expect. You out of your mind, but she didn't flip out. 2 weeks later, she'd had her own set of experiences. And I resigned, she resigned, and we walked away into the sunset. We've been together for 14 years.
Wow.
And we really didn't know each other very well at all. The reason that's important is 2 weeks earlier, I'd gotten sober. And this was the angel who was sent to help me tackle and overcome 40 years of depression and self-loathing, because getting sober has nothing to do with that. I was an addict and everything else because of the depression. And so this is the fundamental problem. And she has been unflagging and just an angel in support of fixing all that. So I walked away from the whole career, became a coach, and now I've written 15 books, and I spend my life from morning to night every single day helping people discover, develop, and manifest their divine nature. So it was a 180 pivot, and that's the short version. And if you want to read the rest, it's in a book called Tightrope of Depression, My Journey from Darkness, Despair, and Death to Light, Love, and Life.
Well, I could just say, hey, folks, pass that perfection, go for greatness, and let it go. But I have a few questions.
Oh, I expected so, but I didn't want to take up too long telling the story. So
no. I appreciate your consideration and giving me the short version. So I'm going to back up a little bit here. So you said that you did not know her very well. She was in one of your groups. What kind of group was she in that in which you worked with her, but you didn't know her very well?
Well, a lot of people worked for me. So I knew who she was, and I knew her, but I didn't know her personally. In terms of anything about her personally, I just knew she was one of my project managers, and she managed some very big projects. She had a promising career. She'd been in that department for 9 years and other departments in other areas, but she was good at her job. She was well respected. And I knew that. She did good work. That's kind of all I knew about her. She was a good project manager, and she did cool stuff in my groups that I needed done. And that's kind of what I knew.
Okay. All right. So,
and she liked classical music.
Yeah, obviously. Okay. Did Yo-Yo Ma play at the wedding?
No, he did not come and play at the wedding. That was a good question, but no, I didn't get to know him that well.
Gotcha. So, okay. So to this your question you asked her the very night, you went on one date essentially, and she is your employee, and you ask her this question. She says no, but again, does not call HR, does not call the cops on you. what, I guess, between that time and the time that you obviously get married, like, what was the change? Like, what was the next step that she took? Was she the one that called you out and called you back and said, you know what, maybe let's give it a try? Or how did that transpire?
So thank you. No one has actually ever asked that before. She went home that night. The next day we were at work, and there was something, well, the whole thing was divinely orchestrated. So there was something electric about the whole experience. And I've asked her since. I mean, everybody in the department knew that I had a drug problem. They didn't know, but there were rumors and everything. Everybody kind of knows that stuff, right? So she knew, and I've asked her a whole bunch of times, what on earth, like what in the world would have possessed you to walk away from a promising career into the sunset with a drug addict that you don't know very well? Like what? And she said, I've asked myself that question a bunch of times. She just said, I just knew to the core of my soul that it was the right thing to do. And so the answer is, we talked a little bit the next day. We agreed to have some more conversation, and very quickly it just became apparent, and not this romantic, monstrous attachment, although I love her furiously. It was this thing, this tangible energy. This has to happen, and it has to happen now. And she literally sold her condo and moved down, moved 200 miles. I was commuting to where I was working because I was living one place and flying every day on a small jet. I had an apartment in the other city. It doesn't matter. Those are all details that don't matter. But she sold her apartment and moved in with me like in 15 minutes. The whole thing is mad. Not 15 minutes, 15 days. Yeah. Like a craziness. And it was only because of the intensity. And the reason this is important, isn't because, wow, what a romantic story or what a crazy thing, both of which are true. The reason it's important is because it's an evidence to you, to me, to every one of your listeners. That's how important you are. That our creator, I mean, I made a mess out of my life. I'm 52 years old. I have 10 kids. I have 3 exes. I am a disaster. And, the divine decides, okay, it's time to issue this invitation. And it's always an invitation. Nobody makes anybody do anything. An invitation to radically change your life, to completely walk away from all your money, power, career. And here's someone, and I'm inviting them to go with you because this is the path. And that's how important you, me, each one of the listeners, that's how important you are. And that's why this story is important. Not because the crazy stuff happened, although it's crazy, it's absolutely crazy, but because it's an evidence of how important you are.
That is a wonderful message, because we get so stuck in our everyday lives and in the drama of media, or the drama that is cast upon us given our station in life, that we do sometimes forget we are important, that we do serve a purpose. And thank you for that reminder, Kellan. So what is your wife's name, your partner's name?
Her name is Joy. Like, you can't make this stuff up. Her name is Joy.
Well, yeah, I mean, that just seems to fit. So
of course it does, but like you can't make this up, right?
Yeah. So you enjoy, as you say, a walk up into the sunset. What is the first step in this new journey that you take, besides, moving into it with each other and, saying bye to your old careers?
Yeah, she quit. I quit. She was a long time. She had some hobbies. She was a long time dealer on eBay in antiques and collectibles. Her dad had been an archaeologist and had passed away about 3 years before then, 2005. So just 2 years before we were together, and had left her a bunch of old artifacts. So she had a couple of antique stalls in different antique malls around the city. and had an eBay presence that did a lot of glass, silver, that sort of antiques kind of stuff. And so she ramped that up and started creating that. I had been a musician, and that has to do with part of the story of depression, because my mom hated that idea and didn't want me to do it, and I had to abandon it all. So I reopened a recording studio and started recording music again, at the same time exploring what I could do that was in addition to that. And after a couple of years, I started thinking about the coaching piece, because I realized the big changes that had taken and were taking place in me. It took me 2 or 3 years to even begin to address the depression. I mean, I finally started to go talk to somebody else. First time in my life I'd ever talked to a counselor, for example, a year or so after we got married. And at first I didn't even know how to tell the truth to the counselor. I was so used to being in charge, being in control, and having to be right, even if I had to lie. And I was a pathological liar about everything. So I had to go tell the counselor everything that was wrong and everything that I'd already learned and how to fix it. And I'm sure they thought I was useless and crazy. It took me 2 or 3 years before I could just tell the truth and be vulnerable and just actually start working on what needs to be different here, because obviously the way I'd conducted my own life was a disaster. Mm-hmm. So what do we need to do here in order to even make some progress? So that was the first steps. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say that is fascinating. And the way you say it, it's like, I'm just imagining you just have this mask, that this whole like suit of armor that you're wearing that was forged out of the struggles and the abuse and all the the tribulations you've dealt with, and then having to shed that and not even knowing how to unbuckle it, how to unbuckle this armor and take it off. That must have been an enormous mental struggle for you.
Well, it was slow. I mean, I went through 3 or 4 counselors, because I would talk to them 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times and realize nothing's happening here. And it was my fault, because I didn't know how to use their skill. And some are better than others at being patient, asking questions, seeing through stuff, calling my bullshit. Some are better than others, and some try, but all of them tried, and they were all, Joy found them. She would look up in the resumes and say, this one sounds like a good one. It might be a good fit. And so she went to battle trying to, one guy was 75 years old and he was a forensic PhD psychologist. And he was one of my favorites. And others, she would find him after 5 or 6, and I'd say, it just doesn't, okay, fine. She'd go find another one and, go to work on helping me. But see, I didn't even know how to have a friend. Like, I didn't even understand how valuable what she was doing was. It took me 4 or 5 years before I learned how to love, before I learned how to be loved, before I learned how to have a friend. I didn't even know what that was.
You are a combination of A Christmas Carol and Groundhog's Day. Because the first part is Christmas Carol, when you wake up and have this epiphany, and the second part is Groundhog Day. Groundhog Day just taking years, this one day stretched into years, because she's the Andy McDowell character trying to teach you how to be a human, and of course you're Bill Murray trying to learn all these lessons. And so, yeah, you are a movie character, but it's, again, it is fascinating that you have had this experience and you are willing to share it with others so they can make their lives better. And so, was there one, I guess, is there one counselor that you've been stuck with, or not stuck with, but you've been working with these past 10 years then?
No, I've probably seen 7 or 8. The one that I like the most, I'm not seeing one right now. For several years we did. The one that I like the most, that is here in Edmonton, Alberta, And I would go back to, if I felt like I even needed to talk to somebody once or twice or something, is that geezer who is an ex-biker, ex-drug addict himself, PhD, forensic guy. He's 10 years older than I am. Okay. And he has long hair and he was weird. And I'm like, and part of our sessions, he introduced me to something called shamanic breath work, which is a particular style of breath work to a really heavy beat. And so after we met in shrinkdom for several weeks, many sessions, he said, well, I'd like to try this. And so we did this, and it was really valuable. And then the sessions were longer. They were not 60 minutes, but 90 minutes or even longer. And we'd come in and talk for a few minutes. He said, all right, sounds like that's a good thing to take to the mat. And the mat means to lay down and to then go through this breathing for like an hour or 70 minutes and see what happens. And so unorthodox and, but he was very insightful dude. And so, yeah, he was my, he would be my favorite.
Wow. That's, I'm just imagining you and this ex-biker, drug addict, long-haired, doctor laying down on the mat, practicing your breath work. It's quite the image there. So, but I am interested in this breath work because I as a runner, I focus on my breathing a lot, because when you're running 13 or 26 or however long you're running, you have to make sure that your body's working optimally. And breathing is a little part of that. And so when you're going through this hour-long session, what is the physical change that you're experiencing maybe halfway through or maybe at the end that is so transformative?
So this shamanic breath work is very, very rapid mouth breathing. You lay on your back, you breathe, fill your lungs all the way up, including diaphragm. So top, middle, bottom, in, out, really hard, really fast. At first, it would be like lightheaded, hyperventilate. And then you get way, way, way past that, and actually moves you into an altered state of consciousness. So in an altered state of consciousness with that much fast breathing, and you really, to learn to do it, you have to focus, because for 3 or 4 minutes, it's easy, and then it gets hard. And then you have to keep doing it, and you tingle. It moves all the way to your ends of your toes and fingers, and then your head is like wildly over oxygenated. You can have, it's literally an altered state. So you can have visions and all kinds of stuff. And so when we would do that, he would ask me at the end, you have to lay there for a minute and come back to earth.
Yeah.
And then he would ask me what I saw and what I thought. And we didn't start until I had a topic. So we would have a topic, and I would go, and you just let happen whatever happens. And one time I had a vision of one of those India, I don't know, with deities. They're very colorful, and it looked like a woman, big headdress kind of thing that I think of a Hindu, if anybody listens to this that's not, and I've got it all wrong, I apologize, but that's what I thought it was, colorful deity. And so I was having a conversation with her, and she said the following phrase, and the phrase was, from the place of being, the doing becomes trivial. And that phrase means, it's obvious what it means, but to think about it, it is, if you choose to be something, then the doing that manifests that is easy. And if you think of addictions, for example, or any change, when you try to white knuckle something, which is force your behavior change with white knuckle willpower, it becomes and remains difficult. If you change who you're being from the inside out, then the doing part is easy. Anyway, when I got out of the trance, I got up, and he said, so, what happened today? And I told him, well, yeah, this lady from the place of being, the doing becomes trivial. And it was funny because he was sitting in a chair, and he didn't lay on the floor. I did. He sat in a chair. But anyway, he spun around in the chair, and his head whipped around. He said, can I use that? And I said, yes, of course. So those kinds of things, insights, and he would write them down for me and take them. And I have, things that I would take away from each of those sessions. And the point of all that is everything that we experience in life is of our own creation. What I mean by that isn't that we control or ask for stupid things that other people do. What I mean is, by creating your own experiences, you get to decide, and you do decide whether you mean to or not, how you experience every event around you. And by those choices, you create your life. And the cumulative value of these insights, plus other books that I've read and all the other things, have grounded me in that truth, which means I get to live a life of joy every single day, not only because I'm married to her, but because I choose to do that. I refuse to be defined or limited by anything that has happened in the past, or by anything that happens today, or by anything that anybody else does or says or doesn't do or doesn't say, because I own my life.
That is immensely powerful, because obviously it's such a simplistic, thought concept. Oh, I'm my own person. I can do anything I want. But we are so inundated by all kinds of stimuli that we can either be washed away by the tidal wave of media and the novelty of now, or we, as you said, we can live in the moment. We can choose our own destiny. We can choose our own thought patterns and messages and actions. When I speak, a phrase I use a lot is, where your thoughts go, your mind and body will follow. And what you said just illustrates that beautifully, Kellan. Thank you so much for sharing that.
It's totally right. You do. And if I leave you just two thoughts, the truth, it's easy to say, well, you create your own experience, blah, blah, blah. And then it's also easy to say, yeah, it's easy for you to say, it's a bunch of crap. You don't deal with blah, 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 all the stuff I do. I don't care where you are right now. I don't care where you've been, and I don't care what's happened to you. You're a divine sovereign being, and you can own that choice today. And if your habit has been to give it away, to allow externalities and other people's opinions, attitudes, and feelings of the government or God or the universe or COVID or anything else to control how you feel and how you show up, that's okay. The thing that can happen to you right now is you can say, you know what, I'm done doing that. And I don't care what anybody else does or says. I'm going to choose how I live in that space and in that universe. And what you'll find is, by making that choice, you have so much more power to affect even those externalities than you have any idea of today.
That sounds like something you've written in one of your books. And
I should have. I don't know, probably somewhere.
Well, there's number 15. So
yeah.
Speaking of those books, what moved you to start writing?
I never imagined myself an author. When I first started, when I dropped out of that career, I said, what am I going to do? And the first thing I did is I wanted to help people learn to meditate, because you talk about martial arts. I've done that since I was a youngster, on and off, and that included meditation for me. And I have actually owned a little martial arts studio for a while, and I have a second degree black belt in a couple of different styles. So I connected with you, and you said that Tang Sudo and Shuri Te, which is Okinawan old style.
Okay.
And Tang Sudo is the other Korean besides Taekwondo.
Yep.
So it's Taekwondo and Tang Sudo. But anyway, so the first thing I did is I wrote a series of 5 books on meditation. And they were different aspects of it, how it affects different parts of life. And that was so that I could start doing something, creating a business and selling. I sold meditation product. I created some meditation music because I had, bought some gear and recording and, made some music and stuff like that. Then as I finally got a handle on my own depression and healing and all that stuff, I realized I needed to tell the story of my life. So then I wrote Tightrope of Depression, which is a story about myself. And I never thought that I'd write any more about that. I thought, okay, I've told the story, I'm done. And about 5 minutes after I got done writing it, I realized I was just getting started. And so I've written volume 2, which is called Down from the Gallows. And volume 3 will come out at the end of next year. So it'll be a trilogy.
Nice.
Then I wrote a business book called The Results Equation, which is a process coming from my years as a consultant and high-powered blah, 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 about how to make things happen. And then I wrote a book called The Story Arc, which is a book about how to write books. And it's the process I use in my workshops to help people write books. And then I wrote a book. Then 3 years ago, in 3.5 years ago, in June of 2018, I died. I got a fatal illness and died in the intensive care unit at the University of Alberta Medical Center here. And so I had a very empathetic moment with you. I had necrotizing MRSA in both lungs and in my bloodstream.
Ooh, wow.
And it's up. I mean, they told me later that the 10-day mortality rate of that particular strain that I had was 100%. And so, I died. No kidding, was the answer, right? And during that time, unexpectedly, I had a near-death experience and had 3 conversations with God at the door between life and eternity. So then I wrote a book called Meeting God at the Door, Conversations, Choices, and Commitments of a Near-Death Experience. And then I wrote a couple of follow-on books, one called The Book of Context, which is about changing beliefs, and one called Walking Without Fear. And I just finished the first draft of a book called Forgiveness, A Journey of Courage to a Place of Freedom and Power. And so I have 6 or 7 others that I'm working on right now too. So that's what happened. I never fashioned myself an author during all those years as an executive, but I've been driven since I walked away from that, and I can't stop. And I love writing, and I love helping other people do that.
Well, it sounds like that executive position shackled your imagination, your creativity.
Yes.
And now you're unfettered and free to explore all those avenues.
Amen.
So that's fantastic. Where can we find these fantastic books, Kellan?
One of the fun things about having a name like Kellan Fluckiger is I'm really easy to find. So if you
not
Google,
many Fluckigers around.
No, especially a Kellan Fluckiger.
Yeah.
Actually, in parts of Switzerland, Fluckiger is as common as Smith. But Kellan Fluckiger, there's only 2 in the world. I have 8 billion, and the other one's my son. And so if you look me up on Amazon, there's lots of books and music that I've done. If you Google me, there's thousands and thousands of hits because of the executive stuff I did, papers I wrote, and I testified before Congress and all that crap. All that's in there. So I'm not hard to find. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. Easy to find because of the name.
Yes. Wow. I would say that you have said enough. But if there was one parting message you could leave with the audience, maybe to help them through the rest of their day, or just to maybe start their day on a positive note, what would that be?
It would be this. No matter what has come, what hardballs life has thrown at you, no matter what struggles you've been through, it is never too late to change, to matter, and to have a big impact if you choose to lean into your divine purpose. Like, you're valuable, you're of infinite worth. I don't care where you are or what you've been through. It's never too late. It's never too much water under the bridge. Never, never, never. Go get help if you need to. Go talk to somebody. Take at least that kind of control, so you can take the first step to moving in the direction of health, recovery, power, because somebody needs your help.
Well said, sir. Well said. Thank you so much for sharing your story, Kellan, and that beautiful message. I have one more question for you. What is your favorite dinosaur?
Wow. I don't know. I suppose it would have to be, I don't even know the names. I mean, I know the name of like Brontosaurus and T-Rex and stuff, but it would probably be one of those great big raptors that could fly.
Okay, like a pterodactyl or a pteranodon?
You're over my pay grade, whatever they are.
Right. Yeah. It's a question I ask all my guests because one time, I was like a couple of years ago before I started the podcast, obviously, someone was lamenting that no one asks them what their favorite dinosaur is anymore. And I thought, you know what? I'll be that guy. I'll ask you.
Well, I love it. I never have been asked that question before. And obviously, because I have no idea. So one of those great big things that fly that's big and powerful and, like the precursor to the eagles that were part of Lord of the Rings. The ones before those guys.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they're almost dinosaurs themselves.
Yeah. They're ancestors. Bigger than that. Those guys.
Well, my friend, and I am honored to consider that. I mean, I don't know if you think the same of me, but you are a joy to know, Kellan Fluckiger. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me. It is a blessing as I start this next year of podcasting and just living life to the fullest. And I hope your message reaches those who need it most. So folks, if you want to reach out to Kellan, you can find him at Amazon. Like you said, he and his son have the monopoly on the Kellan Fluckiger name. So check them out for his message and his wonderful books. If you want to find out what I have to offer, you can go to chrisdtgordon.com. Thankfully, I have a monopoly on that name. You can find out more about me and the attitude of gratitude, or TAG for short. Please download a free TAG one sheet so you can practice playing tag at home, at the office, wherever you need a little more gratitude, positivity, and resilience. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining me today. Please have a wonderful day. And remember to pass on perfection and go for greatness.